A custody dispute out in Colorado allegedly led a 17-year-old to murder his own mother. And even worse, authorities say, is that he teamed up with his father to kill her. A months-long investigation into this murder led authorities to make these arrests, and the details in the supporting affidavit are just shocking. I'm going to talk with a Colorado criminal defense attorney as we get to the bottom of this case. Welcome to Sidebar, presented by Law&Crime. I'm Jesse Weber. Hey everybody, this is a Law&Crime legal alert. So recent studies have uncovered a link between Depo-Provera, aka the Depo shot, and an increased risk of brain tumors. Yeah, lawsuits are being filed against Pfizer, the manufacturer of Depo-Provera, alleging that they failed to warn patients and doctors about the risk and instead rushed the drug to market while downplaying the adverse event reports. So if you've been diagnosed with a brain tumor, you're experiencing symptoms like headaches, vision problems, seizures, other neurological issues, you may qualify for compensation. And Wright & Schulte, one of our legal sponsors, is a national firm helping those injured to ensure their claims are thoroughly presented. Visit deposhotclaims.com/sidebar to answer less than 10 questions and check your eligibility to file a claim. 17-year-old Hevon Martinez and his father, 43-year-old Charles Martinez, are accused of murdering the boy's mother, 38-year-old Chrystal Snow, after allegedly gunning her down inside of her home in July of this year. Now, I am sure that you're made of questions. I was too when I first looked into this story. The first one probably being, what led police to this father and son duo, right? Well, that is what we want to talk about. We want to go back to what happened on the night of July 2nd. According to the arrest affidavit obtained by Law&Crime, at around 2:30 in the morning, police received a 911 phone call from Chrystal Snow's phone. And all the operators could really hear on the other end was what they described as just agonized breathing. When authorities arrive at her home, they find her dead on the bathroom floor of the master bedroom. The affidavit reads, based on the deputy's initial observations, Chrystal appeared to have suffered a gunshot wound to her upper right arm, a gunshot wound to her upper right chest, and a gunshot wound to her right leg. One spent cartridge casing was also found on the floor near the victim. Witnesses reported hearing multiple gunshots about 10 minutes before the 911 phone call. In fact, one witness saw a vehicle leave the scene with the passenger side door of the vehicle having been opened, which would indicate that maybe there was more than one person inside of that vehicle, right? Now, police, they believe that Chrystal was just ambushed inside of that home. The affidavit reads, it appeared that one gunshot was fired from outside of the residence through the front living room window. The victim appeared to have fled to the bathroom of the master bedroom, where she was confronted by the suspect and shot multiple times. It's believed that a .40 caliber pistol was used in this shooting, although it's unclear whether it was Charles or Hevon who fired the fatal rounds. We'll talk about if that matters. But as far as how police landed on these two individuals, well, witnesses revealed a key conversation just hours before the homicide, and it was related to the custody of the couple's other child. So we're talking about Hevon's younger brother. According to the arrest affidavit, during that conversation, Charles had tried to convince Chrystal not to go forward with her attempt to gain full custody of Hevon Martinez's brother. Charles also blamed Chrystal for the ongoing familial issues that they were experiencing. And authorities allege that both Charles and Hevon knew exactly what Chrystal was planning to do that she was killed. Quote, Charles and Hevon Martinez were both aware that Chrystal Snow was preparing to file paperwork at court the following day related to her petition for full custody of Hevon Martinez's brother. Charles and Hevon Martinez made one last attempt to convince Chrystal not to go to court and file for full custody. Now, the following day, investigators go to the residence that Martinez was staying at, and this was related to a welfare investigation that they were conducting regarding the couple's younger son. When police go there and they make contact with Martinez, what do they find? They see what they claim were injuries on his hand. Quote, Detective Parker noticed what appeared to be fresh injuries to Charles' right hand. Detective Parker said the top of Charles's right hand appeared swollen. Charles also appeared to have a fresh cut to the cuticle area of one of the fingers of his right hand. And what's also troubling about this is that investigators, as they're looking into this, they find out about this lengthy domestic violence history between Martinez and Chrystal. And they even interviewed a victim advocate that Chrystal had been in contact with, who told them that both Charles and Hevon had made threats to kill her in the past. Quote, Chrystal detailed how Hevon Martinez put his hands on her throat and threatened to kill her. This is his own mom. Chrystal had also documented that Hevon Martinez began physically assaulting her by hitting her in February of 2023. According to reporting from the Denver Post, Chrystal had a protective order that was filed in June following the couple's split in October of last year, and this was related to verbal abuse and harassment. In fact, one incident she relayed to the victim's advocate involved apparent threats that Charles had made to violate that protective order. Quote, Chrystal had related her fears that Charles would kill her, that Charles said he would come in the middle of the night to kill her, and that a protective order was just a piece of paper. When you think about that and you think about the allegations right now, pretty chilling. Now, in addition to this, what is clearly a tumultuous past, investigators, they also uncovered a few more key pieces of evidence that pointed them to this father and son duo. For example, there is surveillance footage that apparently shows this white Ford Explorer, which detectives believe was driven by Martinez, and his son was right there with him in the car, and they see it traveling on various local roads to and from the scene of the murder. And they were able to verify that that car was owned by Martinez's mother. They also pointed out steps they believe the pair took to conceal the crime. Quote, video evidence showed the occupants of the white Ford Explorer intentionally removed or covered the license plates of the vehicle. Now, it took authorities roughly 4 months to wrap up their investigation, and charges were officially filed last week against both Charles and Hevon. This was in Colorado's 6th Judicial District, and the pair appeared in court on Friday for their advisement hearings. All right, so to break all this down, I want to bring on Colorado criminal defense attorney Eric Faddis to talk more about this. Eric, good to see you. Thanks so much for coming on. I mean, this is happening in your state. What are just your initial impressions of this case? Especially, it's not every day you see a father and son accused of murder together, let alone of the boy's mother.
Yeah, just a chilling set of circumstances here. And this happened in Archuleta County in Colorado, which is really just a small rural town. They've got a population of like 13,000 or so. And never did those folks expect that in their hometown, there would be this sort of familial, multiple suspect homicide that we're now seeing here in these reports.
And what stands out to you in terms of some of the evidence that I laid out that points back to these two individuals? I mean, you wish it wasn't true. You wish they weren't involved in this, but I don't know. The evidence feels relatively straightforward.
Yeah, the Colorado authorities looked at a number of things in their investigation. Of course, they looked at motive. Who had a reason to do this? And like you said, Chrystal was attempting the following day to file for sole custody of the child. And there is a conversation between Chrystal and Charles, the father, in Talking Parents, which is an electronic app that shows Charles sort of pressuring her to not do that. So he didn't want her to do that. He took this sort of last-ditch effort to try to prevent Chrystal from retaining full custody of the son. On top of that, Chrystal had a protection order against her son, Hevon Martinez, 17 years old, from the year before, alleging serious physical violence.
Yeah, it's disturbing to think about. And even if you put that aside, you say, oh, they were probably looked at initially or considered. But the idea that you look at the surveillance footage and you see this white Ford Explorer traveling in and around that area, multiple witnesses, or at least one witness said that they see this car, the passenger side door is open. I mean, tracking that car that has no license plates and saying it belongs to Charles Martinez's mother, that in and of itself would be pretty tough for defense attorneys to fight against, no?
Oh, certainly. I mean, it is a direct link to Charles Martinez. And it's not just, eyewitness testimony or something like that. It's something that's objectively verifiable. They have surveillance video of this thing. They have some indications as to where this vehicle was coming from, where it stopped, and then from where it fled. And that all relates back to this murder and the scene of the crime.
I was thinking about this. Is there a way to say, well, listen, you have two different defendants here. Hevon might be able to turn against his father. He's younger, maybe he was manipulated or influenced by his father, but he's charged with murder too. I mean, is there any way that could be a viable defense?
Certainly, Hevon is in a better legal posture than the father, Charles Martinez. Like you said, he's younger, and some of the evidence raises some eyebrows. Charles Martinez had apparently some fresh injuries to his right hand, and there's also blood on the exterior doorknob of Chrystal Snow's house and inside her house. But it doesn't relate to Charles; it relates to, they think, Hevon Martinez. And so, did Hevon Martinez suffer some kind of injury? Was he under duress when he did this? These are all things that his defense team is going to explore.
But does it also matter who fired the shots? So if, let's assume for purposes of this, that Charles was the one who ultimately fired the shots and Hevon was just there, Hevon technically can still be charged with first-degree murder, right? He's part of that event. But is there a way that defense attorneys can say he didn't fire the weapon, he's not as culpable as his father? Walk us through whether or not he can still be legally responsible for murder if he didn't actually fire the shots.
Surely. So under Colorado law, there's something called accomplice liability. Most states have it. And essentially what it means in this case is that even if Hevon didn't fire the shots, if he knew what Charles intended to do to kill Chrystal Snow, and he provided some material assistance, some aid, which, it appears that he was present the entire time, and there's the inference that he was providing some kind of assistance, that alone is enough to charge him with first-degree murder, even though Hevon may not have fired the shots. Now, can that still be used to his benefit, the fact that he may not have fired the shots? Absolutely. And I imagine investigators are really peppering Hevon with questions, or at least contacting his attorney to see if Hevon would be willing to testify against his father, because that would help solidify the case against the father and perhaps give a better outcome to someone who was arguably less culpable, being Hevon.
And to be clear, we don't know if that's the case, if he fired the shots, he didn't fire the shots. I'm just doing it for purposes of assuming what would happen. It is a little bit of a complicated case because Hevon was 17 at the time, but he is being charged as an adult. So the questions I have for you first are, why is he being charged as an adult? Are there arguments that his defense attorneys can make to bring it back into the juvenile system? And if he is tried as a juvenile as opposed to an adult, what is the advantage for Hevon Martinez?
Yeah, so, as a general rule, if someone in Colorado is under 18, then they're going to be charged as a minor. There's an exception to that rule, however. So if someone is engaged in essentially what is adult criminal activity, like murdering someone or helping to murder someone, the state can go after that person as an adult. And if he's charged with first-degree murder, he'd be facing potentially life in prison. Now, his attorneys can seek what's called a reverse transfer hearing to try to convince the court to bring the case back down to the juvenile court and prosecute Hevon as a juvenile. The benefit to that is that the maximum potential sentence in juvenile court is decades less than he would be looking at as an adult. And in fact, if he was prosecuted in juvenile court and convicted, he would still get out sometime in his 30s if that's the direction the prosecution took.
But going back to the idea of whether that was an option, whether or not he would take a deal to testify against his father, he is reportedly and allegedly incredibly dangerous, even besides what is being alleged in this murder plot. The fact that he was allegedly violent with his mother, how could prosecutors in good faith work out a deal where he might be on the outside? Isn't he a danger to society?
The allegations against Hevon, the 17-year-old, are very serious, not only in the instant case, but like you said, when looking at his history. In fact, as I mentioned, his mother, Chrystal Snow, filed a protection order against Hevon, her own son, who was a minor, because he allegedly choked her and said he was going to kill her months before this incident happened. And on top of that, he was being held in a juvenile facility when he was contacted by police about this matter days or weeks after. So certainly some red flags, some concerns there. Prosecutors got to look out for community safety. And that is a real issue when we're talking about when a person could possibly be released in the future.
If he is tried as an adult, would he be tried alongside his father in the same trial?
That is unclear at this time. Certainly, prosecutors can seek to try multiple defendants in one trial. If I was defense counsel for either of these defendants, I would probably seek to sever those trials because their defenses are likely what are called adversarial defenses, meaning Hevon might blame Charles might blame Hevon. And when there is that sort of a scenario, usually the courts will decide to sever the cases and try the individuals separately.
And just to clarify this point, if they are tried as adults, they're found guilty, what are they looking at? Maximum punishment?
Life in prison. It's the most serious crime that there is, first-degree murder in Colorado, and they're looking at life in prison. I guess the death penalty, I think that may have been recently abolished, but practically speaking, in Colorado, it just does not have any more teeth. So I think that the maximum possible sentence is life in prison.
No possibility of parole?
Correct.
Okay. One other aspect of this case that I find really sad is that, taking all these allegations as true, we know that Chrystal had taken steps to protect herself from Charles with the protective order that she filed. I don't know if he was the one who really did this and his son was the one who really did this, what else could she have possibly done here? Is there anything more the courts could have done? Is there anything more law enforcement could have done?
You know, in looking at these cases, especially when there is a domestic violence backdrop, sometimes these victims are in a vulnerable place. Sometimes they're in a dependent place. Sometimes it's hard for them to remove themselves from the situation, from the locale. This is a small town. And so, you know, she did take measures to try and protect herself. She sought a protection order, but apparently Charles Martinez told her that protection order is just a piece of paper and that he's going to come after her. And lo and behold, here's where we were at now. And so, you know, what else could she have really done? It's a bit unclear to me. She was already involved in family law proceedings to try to ostensibly protect her youngest child. And, you know, she was doing what she could. And then here's how we end up with her, you know, with gunshots on her bathroom floor.
Speaking of that younger child, her younger son, what happens to him now that she's dead? The boy's father's facing a murder charge. The brother's facing a murder charge. What happens to that boy?
Yeah, Jesse, I mean, my heart breaks for this young child because not only is his mother murdered and dead, but the person who is allegedly responsible is his father, who is in custody. His brother is in custody. Who is going to take care of this kid? Now, he's going to go into the Child Protective Services system here in Colorado, and perhaps there might be some possibility of a foster home down the road. Occasionally, they will look at whether the family can take in, you know, extended family could take in this child. But according to the affidavit, some of that extended family is implicated in this whole thing. And so I think that child is unfortunately going to just meander in this system indefinitely.
Let's talk about next steps now that arrests have been made after this investigation that spanned several months, and not surprising because you can look at the amount of evidence that they have obtained to ultimately justify arresting these two. But the pair appeared in court last week for what is called an advisement hearing. Talk to us about what that is in Colorado, and also talk to us about what you're going to be looking for next in this criminal case for both of them.
Certainly. So they were at an advisement hearing. So that means they're advised of the charges against them and the potential penalties of those charges. So certainly the gravity of this entire matter, I imagine, has set in for the Martinezes at that juncture. Now, from there, there is going to be a number of measures taken by both sides. Prosecution is going to continue their investigation. Defense is going to continue their investigation. Defense is going to seek bond to try to get these individuals out of custody to fight the case on the outside. I think that's very unlikely that there will be bond issued or that it would be something that anyone could post. So they will probably remain in custody. Ultimately, there is going to be what's called a preliminary hearing where the prosecution has to show that they have sufficient evidence to bring this charge and to hold these folks while this case is pending. And so that'll probably be the next major event in the case.
Eric Faddis, thanks so much for coming on. Really appreciate it. Sad case, but we'll continue to keep an eye out for it. Thank you so much.
Till next time.
All right, everybody, that's all we have for you right now here on Sidebar. Thank you so much for joining us. And as always, please subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, wherever you get your podcasts. I'm Jesse Weber. Speak to you next time.